Most beginners type data manually in Excel, but autofill can do it instantly. Here we will take a look at Excel autofill tricks that every beginner should know. So here in the first case, I have this number 1. So let's say I want to repeat it across all the other cells in that column. So instead of copying and pasting it in every cell, I'll just drag it across to the other cells. You just take the mouse cursor to the bottom right of the cell. You'll see the pointer changing to a black plus. Now you drag it across to the other cells. You see the number 1 gets repeated in all the other cells. So use this trick if you want to repeat the same value across a range of cells. Now you can apply the same technique to create a number series also. Here I have two numbers 1 and 2. So let's say you want to continue that series, say 3, 4, 5 and so on. So you select the first two cells so that Excel knows that it's a start of a series. Now take the mouse pointer to the bottom right. When the pointer changes to a black plus, drag it down to the other cells. You see it continues the number series. This is another way in which autofill can be used. You can take the same concept further to create custom increment pattern. So in this case you have 5 and 10, and let's say you want to continue with the pattern 15, 20, 25 and so on. So again select the first two cells so that Excel knows that it's a start of a pattern. Take the mouse pointer to the bottom right of the second cell. The pointer will change into a black plus. Now drag it across to the other cells. You see the pattern gets repeated. So this way you can create any custom increment pattern. So this is how you can apply autofill to numbers. In case you're liking the video, do subscribe to the channel. It helps us create videos like this. Now the autofill concept can also be applied to dates. So here you have days, month and year. So here you have Monday. Now if I drag the cell, so Excel will list the other days of the week. Excel assumes that you are trying to list the names of the week, so it will automatically show the other days of the week. The same thing you can do with months as well. You have Jan, drag the cells across. You see Excel will automatically put the other months of the year. It shows Jan, Feb, March, April and so on. You can do the same with dates as well. Excel internally stores date as number, so this is going to behave like number. So if the year is 2026, when you drag it across, it will copy 2026 in all the cells. But if you give 2026 and 2027, select both the cells, and then when you drag across, you see it continues the series just as it did in the case of numbers. You can even use this concept to copy formulas across all the cells. So just type a formula once. In this case I'm saying this one multiplied by 10. So basically for this range I want all the numbers to be multiplied by 10. So I just take the first number, multiply it by 10. Now when I do an autofill, it will basically do formula fill. You see it has multiplied each of this by 10. So it has copied the formula across to the other cells. Instead of dragging, in this case you can also just go here and double click. It does the same thing. It copies the formula across to the other cells. So you can apply this concept as formula fill. So use the formula fill feature to copy formula to adjacent cells. So in this case Excel automatically adjusts the cell references based on the new locations. I've covered cell referencing in another video. Do check out that video. The double click fill handle is quite useful when you have to copy something and there are lots of rows. The double click fill handle makes it very easy to copy the cells across a lot of rows. So when you are double clicking, Excel looks for two things. First is the anchor column. So let's say I'll put a number here. And when I double click, you see it copied all the cells across. But initially at the beginning of the video, when I showed this example, the double click would not have worked because there was no other column on the left, the anchor column on the left. In this case, because there's another column on the left, it knows where to stop. So with 1, 2 also, like if I double click, it will continue because on the left there is data and Excel assumes that I want the series or the pattern to be continued till the end. And if there's a blank row somewhere in between, then double click will stop just before the blank row. It will treat the blank row as the end of the table. So let's say I insert a blank here. Now if I double click, it will stop because there's a blank row below. So the double click fill handle is very useful, but just be aware of the rules of double clicking. And as we saw here, it also copies the formulas. I'll repeat that thing, copying the formulas. I'll double click, so it copies. Next we'll take a look at the autofill options menu. So when you click on the fill handle and drag it across, the moment you leave it, you see it shows this small icon with a square and a plus sign. It is the autofill options menu. Just click on it. It will give you the various autofill options. So in this case, it automatically selected the first option, copy cells, because we had given only one. So Excel assumed that we wanted to copy the cell across to all the other cells. But when I give 1 and 2, Excel assumes that it's a series that I want to continue. When I drag the fill handle, now when you go to the autofill options menu, it selects fill series by default because it assumes that I'm trying to complete a series since I had given 1 and 2. In the autofill options menu, there are more options that you can select. Next we'll see how to use the fill formatting only option. So let's say I'll remove this. So I have this cell, I have formatted it, I've given it a yellow background color and I've bordered the cell. So now when I copy it across using the fill handle, I can go to the autofill options and instead of saying copy cells, I can say fill formatting only. When I do that, you see it removed the data and only copied the formatting. It only copies the appearance, it doesn't copy the values. You also have the option fill without formatting. So in that case, it will copy only the values and not the formatting. So it will fill without formatting. See, it copied the values and did not copy the formatting. So that was the autofill options menu. So this is how you use autofill in Excel. So autofill is quite useful, but it's important to be aware of some common mistakes that beginners do when using autofill. So let's say you have this number 1. Now if you want a series, then you just cannot have one number. If there's only one number and you copy across, it's going to copy the same number across. To be able to create a series, you need to give at least the first 2 elements of the series when you have 1 and 2, and then when you drag, it generates the series. So Excel needs a pattern first in case you want the autofill to create a pattern. We also looked at the double click feature, but the double click is not going to work if there's no data to the left, if there's no table already. So when you double click, it's not going to do anything. Even if it's the beginning of a pattern, when you double click, it is not going to do anything because on the left there is no data, there's no anchor column, there's no table on the left. So Excel does not know how far it needs to copy. But let's say I copy this. Now if I say 10, now if I double click, it will copy because on the left hand side there's data, so it knows how far it needs to go. So in case your double click is not working, it's because you don't have much data yet. You must also make sure not to drag too far manually. So let's say you have 7 rows and you want to drag this value down. Make sure you're not dragging it too far. When you have lots of rows in the table, it's quite possible that you may accidentally drag too far and then you will end up having extra data in the table. A better approach is to use the double click fill handle. So just go here and double click because you already have a table next to this value. Double clicking will fill the entire thing automatically. So this will prevent you from dragging it too far. And as I mentioned, if there's a blank row in between, autofill will stop at the blank row. So make sure your data set doesn't have any gaps, otherwise double click will stop early. If you're manually dragging, make sure you're not overwriting any data. Always check before releasing the mouse. You don't want to accidentally overwrite any data. Again, try to use double click as much as possible. You must also be aware that when you copy formula, the formula changes when you drag across to the other cells. For example, here I am adding this cell plus this cell, D3 plus D3. When I copy it across, I'll just double click. So it copies the formula, and in each of the cells, it updates the cell values. This is because Excel uses relative references, so just be aware of that. I've covered referencing in another video. Do check out the video. The autofill is powerful, but beginners often run into these problems, so be aware of that. So that's all in this video. Thanks for watching the video, and do subscribe to our channel. It helps us produce videos like this. Thanks for watching.